Welcome, everyone, to State of the Era, the podcast brought to you by the A1 Alliance, where we discuss all things Shadow Era. You are listening to the velvety smooth voice of BlanketEffect, and I'll be your host. Joining me today on the show are several members of Alliance 1, with whom I'm sure you're familiar. Auto 7.
This is Sparta!
Hi, guys.
Wimbled.
Hello, guys.
And a special treat today, an old-school member of A1 who has recently rejoined the guild, Gondorian.
I'm back. Hi.
On today's show, our main point we're going to be discussing is the current status of Slugfest. We're going to do some in-depth analysis on the hero choices that the players are bringing, who's doing well, who's struggling, and that's going to take up the majority of our time. However, it has been quite some time since we've gotten together to produce a State of the Era, so we're going to take some time to discuss where we all came from as Shadow Era players and how we've come along throughout the game over the years. And then as a final segment, we're going to go ahead and discuss Shadow Era locations from the Lost Lands set, because that has never been discussed on a State of the Era podcast before. So just to start off, let me get a quick little introduction from everyone. Let players who may not be familiar with everyone's background, where you came from, how long you've been playing the game, and why we value your opinion enough to be here on the podcast with us. So start off with Auto 7.
Hey, guys. Hey, Blanket.
I'm 38. I'm from Greece. I've been playing Shadow Era pretty much from the start, back in 2011. You know that you were already 1 month old or something like that in the guild when I came in. Ian was there as well. We lived the game through many phases, the physical cards, many different eras, many different metas. We are here still and we like the game. Let's have some awesome game.
How about you, Wimbled? You seem to be the new blood among us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm relatively new. I've been a part of A1 for maybe 3 or 4 years, but I also started playing Era in 2011. At first as a casual player, but then in the recent 4 or 5 years, I've started to play more and more competitive way. I've played many tournaments, but also QM, and there are players who are better at tournaments, and then some others who are more like QM guys. And myself, I think that my best areas are QM and then tournaments with deck locks, so events like Slugfest. Then there are other guys like Otto here, who is a specialist of tech tournaments, and it requires different skills and also a different mental set. And let's move on to the next guest.
Somebody who requires no introduction, but we're going to go ahead and make him introduce himself anyway, Gondorian.
Yeah, when I found the game in 2011, it had just come onto iOS. So I got it on my trusty iPhone 3GS. And I had been into trading card games for since the mid-90s, when Magic the Gathering came out, actually. But I went the wrong way and I chose the Star Wars card game instead. So I could be sitting on loads of expensive Magic the Gathering cards now, but instead I went for Star Wars. And then the company that made that game, they then made the Lord of the Rings game, so I was into that, and that's where the name Gondorian comes from. I'd always been into these since age 15, 16, and then finally I've got my iPhone 3GS, and I'm looking through reviews and stuff, because back then I'd put quite a lot of apps on my phone. You're always looking for the next app coming out. Now there's just so many, it's ridiculous. But I found a review, a trading card game on my phone that I could spend my phone credit on as well. So I just burnt all my phone credit that weekend. I opened some packs. Really good. So then I was making decks with the small collection I had. And from there, you then find yourself on the forum, don't you? Looking for, or at least you did back then. And that became my home. Yeah. The forum became my home, and I've got over 24,000 posts on there now. Most of them probably in the first 2 years of finding the game. So it's tailed off a bit. But since finding it, I then ended up working on the game. And for most of my time with Shadow Era, I was working on it. But I'm not anymore. I'm back as a player. So to experience it from the outside.
For anybody who doesn't know who I am, because I've been kind of relatively on hiatus for a few years now, I'm BlanketEffect. I joined the game back in 2011, kind of like Gondo there. I stumbled upon the game in the App Store looking for something related to Magic the Gathering, and I was hooked almost immediately in the quick match scene, and I found my way to the forums where I started participating in a lot of discussions. Probably a month or so into that, there weren't really guilds back then. I mean, there were a couple, but there was nothing like a competitive scene. And I was approached online by a gentleman named Padawan Pete, who anybody who's played the game for a long time, it goes way, way back. And after discussing for a while, we decided we wanted to put together a guild or a group of players that would try to take this game to like the next level, that would be able to play it to the highest level that it was able to be played. In short, he and I and 4 other players joined up, and we began what would become Alliance 1 or A1. Shortly thereafter, Gondorian was brought into the fold. Very soon after that, Otto came in, and while I've been away for a long time, there was a point in time where I was very, very active in the game, both on the forums. I think I have 3,000 or 4,000 posts on the forums, and I would say 90% of those came within the first 2 years of playing. So yeah, I don't play nearly as much as I used to, but I'm happy to still be part of the discussion and hopefully able to contribute something of value.
3,000 posts. Wow. Those are rookie numbers.
It's quantity over quality.
Well, he at least has a sexy voice.
At least I have something. So now that everybody is kind of familiar with who they're listening to, we're going to go ahead and break down the elements of Slugfest now and go over which heroes are doing well and which players seem to be dominating thus far.
Well, we already expected that Darklaw would be in a good position. The one making a very good statement at the moment is Amber and Bloodfang, but with very few games played, so I doubt that there can be a real result made at the moment. Nevertheless, they do find themselves at the top of the list. Elemental is still strong with quite some games, so we cannot just pass it without noticing. And then is Darklaw, which it's at the 4th place, but we should remind that the whole meta prepared themselves for Darklaw. I mean, Sorcerer is probably overpowered and probably should be looked upon, maybe for a slight nerf, and yet no one talks about it because Darklaw is so strong that Sorcerer has to be introduced in every human deck. Nevertheless, Darklaw still makes it, even though that everyone is prepared to face.
Are you referring to Sorcerer of India?
Sorcerer of India, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually, when preparing for this event, I ran some different decks, and I found out that even decks with 4 sorcerers in them and some Legend Rises, even those decks were often in trouble. In case the Darklaw player had a good initial run and good early turns, it was not enough to counter him. So in the end, I decided to bring Sanna, because priests have some natural counters. You can build like a normal deck and it counters the Darklaw pretty well. And then I brought Lance, who's pretty much the same. He has like some natural counters, and but nevertheless, both of those heroes, which are kind of anti-Darklaw, they may lose a single game against him. So that's just to tell you how strong he is at the moment.
A question then, since we're discussing Darklaw, and I'm just looking at the list of heroes that are being played and what their records are, and the win rate. Strangely enough, right behind Darklaw in terms of win rate, although it's a much lower number of games played, Terra Dune is there. And do you think that is, at least in part, because he has some intrinsic strength against Darklaw?
I think there are the number of games are quite low, so it's difficult to analyze the reasons behind the good win percentage. But I'd say that he might find himself in trouble against Darklaw as well.
Let's just say that I haven't spotted what kind of deck it is, but I'm pretty sure that it is a Ravager-based one with location. Pardon me for saying dinosaur location, but I like it more that way. Ravencrest, anyway. But the point is that it's just one more deck that plays its way without actually worrying what you are going to do. It's full face. It's very quick. It's like what Darklaw does based on a location. And in the end, he doesn't really care so much about what you do. I mean, if you put aside the profit and capture prey part of it, where he actually needs to deal with your allies, a fast Terradun doesn't even need to do that because he knows that he will kill you within 2 or 3 turns when he sets up.
So what sort of Elementalis are people bringing in? Is it just like a...
Yeah, it's a very fast list. It even runs like the Savage, whom you get to play on the first turn. And, lots of allies, then pumping up your small allies and then like going phase quite fast. So it's it's a typical rush deck based on allies. But of course, like there are different variations, but the idea is always the same. You have the Stardust Amplifier, which you get to play on turn 5, which kind of when you buff that ally, it buffs your whole board. So you kind of have the gold lace shield that buffs up your allies, and while buffing them, it gives you draw as well. So you kind of just swarm the board, and then turn 4 you drop gold lace shield, and on turn 5 the amplifier, and then if you have like some kind of a board presence, it like things just like get very fat very quick.
Well, and something that was always just great about that, I found that I liked so much was that, like, when you're using Cage Savage, people just have to ignore it, really. They don't want to dump their resources into killing this little basic non-threat, but to ignore it is to open yourself up to a very quick threat when it does buff up.
Yeah, definitely.
I like putting Burning Hatred on him, just because suddenly he can attack straight away then out of nowhere.
I think that's the best one for him specifically, although there are other ways to get him big that are also effective. I agree. Burning Hatred seems to be the card that was made for him.
Yeah, it's great. Like if you run those cards and you have the first turn advantage, you drop like Cage Savage on turn 1 and then turn 2 Burning Hatred. It's like it's very difficult to counter that. It gives you it wins you the board pretty much.
Are people still running Krygon nowadays? Because he was in my deck with the Cage Savage, my Zaladar deck.
Yeah, he's a valid option, but you can like use this deck without Krygon, but it's a valid option. And I think that like many decks use it, but there are also many decks that don't. So like you have like these kind of cornerstones that every Elementalis deck runs. For example, the Savage and Amplifier. Most also use the gold-laced shield. But then there are like other pieces in the puzzle which are kind of like optional. You can like go one way or another, and depends on the meta and like also your personal preference.
Regardless of the fact that Burning Hatred was indeed a very suited card for Cage Savage, I do hope that in the future it will see more play with the Ravagers in general, because they are suited for this kind of play.
Let's see, who else do we have here that's being represented heavily? Of course, Victor, Ethan, and Zana seem to be the other 3 heavily played ones. Interestingly enough, also Banebow. Lots of representation, but not doing well at all. He's a 43% win, 12 and 16.
One of those was mine. I brought Banebow. I should say I took part in this event, and I threw together 4 decks about 15 minutes before the submission time. I made them all 50 cards. I never tested any of them. I put together what I thought was a great Banebow, but I forgot to put in cards to deal with his Bane, which is Fatties. And I think my Banebow went up against Elementalis. I had nothing for Fatties. I was screwed.
You know what's interesting? Victor, Ethan, Banebow, and Baduru are all among the most represented heroes brought through Slugfest of games and matches played. However, none of them, the best win rate of any of them is Victor with a 55%. Ethan's got a 54%, Bane's a 43%, and Baduru's a 39%. All of them have close to 30 games or more played. It's interesting. Everybody's bringing hunters, and none of them are performing with any kind of, exceptional level.
Yeah. I think that one explanation for that is the meta resolves around Darklaw being very strong. As you can see, there are lots of counters still going pretty strong. Then there are decks that counter Darklaw. For example, Ethan. But then there are also decks that are brought there to counter the decks that counter Darklaw. And those decks that are meant for countering Darklaw, they may struggle because like then there are other decks that don't beat Darklaw, but beat decks like Ethan, for example. And to name one, Elementalis, if you face him as Ethan, you're screwed. It's very difficult to beat Elementalis because like both are similar, both spam allies, and they require like early board presence. But Elementalis is better at doing that. Then on the other hand, Ethan beats Darklaw because he has like attachment counters, which Elementalis lacks. So Ethan is better versus Darklaw, but then he struggles versus Elementalis.
So, and like you said, Ethan and Elementalis have similarities, and I would think maybe to that, like the whole presence of fatties or quick hitting fatties. And Elementalis has access, of course, to mind control and energy discharge, which can counter Ethan's board. But like you said, Ethan doesn't really have anything to. I mean, he has some. He's got a perfect shot, but generally, Elementalis is going to be better at that than Ethan for sure.
Hearing you talk there, I just had a bit of an epiphany. I'm like, why have I made decks to take on Darklaw? He's only going to be 1/4 of the heroes you even face. So you really should probably have gone, I'm going to eat a loss to Darklaw maybe, and I'll just focus on beating the rest of the field.
You can't really do that because you will face him twice.
Well, yeah, because even if you go 3-1 for the first 4 games, then that means he knows he's got a good reason to bring Darklaw for game 5.
I just went all in. I was thinking Darklaw. I'll put all anti-Darklaw stuff in, and then I'll at least get 1 win when he shows up. I don't think my opponent even brought Darklaw, so I went totally wrong.
Are there any players who are doing well right now who did not bring Darklaw as one of their 4?
Well, there are actually only 2 players that have reached in a very one of the further rounds in Slugfest. It's still early. One is A1 Bintok and the one is Set Kaliba, and they both use Darklaw. Both actually have very predicted and good heroes. Nothing as a very big surprise. They both have Zana. One has Victor and the other has Lance, who pretty much play similar games. They don't have very big differences. And they both have Darklaw. So the only actual difference is that Bin has Banebow and Kaliba has Elementalis.
Question, what is, if you're bringing Darklaw and you're going to face a Darklaw, generally speaking, what tech did you add to your Darklaw to give yourself the edge in mirrors?
Isn't this where your own location shines, where you just plonk your one on top of theirs and now suddenly all their benefits have gone and now you're in control?
Well, yeah, but that is not an extra tech. It's what you already had.
But that's pretty much, it resolves around who controls like the location. It's kind of like mostly just about that.
It's the same thing like what Russell Adwin used to play. I mean, if you have a first turn advantage and you play Chris on turn 1 and then opponent plays Chris on his turn 1, you're actually screwed. So that's how it goes. You play first your key card, opponent plays his key card and buries your own one, and he actually gets super advantage very early. Yeah. If I would play a tech card, maybe that would have been Zaber, so to remove opponent attachments. But it has been shown that even with sorcerers and Legend Rises, you can't really bury that kind of play because it's so aggressive that it comes up and up and up, and Prophet brings more of these attachments. So that I suppose that the most consistent way to play around that deck is to actually be consistent, change nothing, and hope that the other person was dumb enough to change his own deck, and now he has cards that maybe they are useful and maybe they aren't.
One card which is good in the deck in general and which is good like in mirror games as well is Distortion Harness. The armor that gives you the possibility to seek for locations. And while you seek for your own location, you also like shuffle the opponent's location back in the deck. That's one card that some players use, and it definitely gives you an advantage in mirror Darklaw games.
Just for the sake of propriety, what is the location that we're talking about that's included in every Darklaw deck that's doing well?
The Lackmire location.
Yeah.
The training outpost.
Yeah.
Where they can get their attachments on for cheap.
Right.
But it's not actually cheap. It's for free because nobody brings higher cost than
what about Confluence of Fate?
Yes, Confluence. It's paid for one.
Yeah, it's the draw engine because it gives the location gives you a discount of 3 resources on the first attachment you play each turn when you have a Woolen ally on the board. So your draw engine is going to be Confluence. It costs 4, so it kind of it's a tempo loss card, generally speaking. But in that deck, you get to play it for only 1 resource, so it's almost for free, and it gives you consistent draw that lasts for the whole day, whole game.
I got hit with a Wolven Resilience as well. I did actually play a Darklaw. RS Blackie did bring a Darklaw, actually. I lost to it. I got very close to winning with an Aladwin, but I can't remember who that was against. It was I think he had 1 health left, something. So almost got there.
Interesting to see Garth as represented as he is, just given that, he's never been a bad hero in the last, I would say, year or so of meta. You just don't see a whole lot of him. At least, certainly, maybe in the tournament scene you do, but not on the ladder, not so much.
Yeah, I think that he's pretty flexible and he suffers mages and Zeladar a lot. But those are kind of they don't have a big presence in the tournament. And he's good against priests, and also because he can run 4 sorcerers in the deck, so it gives him a lot of flexibility against decks like Darklaw and others. So he basically has a shot at beating almost any deck the opponent brings. So he's a very overall good hero.
And that's what his record would indicate. I mean, 18 games played, he's 8-10. So not on the winning side, but he's hovering pretty close to 50-50.
For every hero that we talk, we should say that even for the ones with the most games played, it definitely goes around to which player brought it and what decks they faced. So in whatever case, the numbers are very low. If you ask me for Garth, I would say that although he's a very staple hero throughout all the Shadow Era history, I wouldn't ever bring him in this tournament when you expect opponent to have Darklaw and you don't really have an actual counter to opponent's attachments. So you have to play your own sorcerer and then hope that you draw your own Legend Rises, which both are answer cards. So you can't really hope for the best when you don't go forward and just wait for an answer to opponent. If you ask me, Garth right now has no actual point in being played because most of the decks out there don't have the very often decks played often don't really have fatties. I mean, Darklaw has allies with 1 to 4 HP and sorcerers with Irem back from 0 or to only a very few allies. So an ability to kill allies easily is not very evaluated, in my opinion. So against the decks that are mostly expected, like Darklaw and Irem mages, I don't really think that the Garth is a very good option.
Yeah, that's also why I didn't bring him, because I was considering bringing Garth because of his overall reliability. But I decided not to because he has some answers against Darklaw, but it's not a favorable matchup. It's a matchup you can win, but not favorable. And then against mages, for example, lowest, there's it's pretty much a lost cause.
And it seems like if you were coming against mages, you may have wasted that deck slot, or at least that effort, because Lost is the most represented mage here, and he's only got 10 games played. He's 6-4. And behind that, you've got Aramia, who is 11 games played with 5 and 6. And beyond that, like, it's a good ways down till you get to Magia. So mages did not make a big appearance in Slugfest at all, really. Irem or otherwise.
Yeah, is it worth us talking about the heroes that we brought that haven't already been mentioned? Like Wimbled, you could talk about the ones that we've not talked about and why you brought them. So I can see your list here now. So you've Lance hasn't been mentioned yet, and Gravebone hasn't been, and even Baduru's quite low down. Do you want to talk through those?
Yeah, so Lance is a natural hero when you want to counter attachments because he has the ability that hastes your own ally, and then you have Eris who can counter attachments that she can destroy one attachment per turn, and so she's like a natural counter against attachment decks. But Lance is like, he's not too slow, but anyways, I think that a good Darklaw with like a very good hand can outpace Lance. But the reason why I brought him was that I think that he's just generally a very solid hero. So he's a hero that I can see doing well in many matchups of this tournament, and he's very reliable. So compared to Garth, I think that he's more flexible and more reliable. Garth kind of like, you have one plan and you stick to that, and some decks just counter it. But with Lance, I think that you have more options, and he has more flexibility due to his ability.
We should note here that you're still in the tournament at the moment. So
yeah.
You're worth listening to right now because you're still in it. I crashed out in the first round, and I think Otto did as well. But anyway, so that's Lance.
Yeah, that's Lance. And then for my second human hero, I decided I've opted for Zana because like she can counter mages because of her healing. Zana decks are usually quite slow and kind of board control oriented, but you have such a huge number of cards and abilities that give you heal that you can last out like Iron mages. So you can just play a long game and you will heal so much that they will find it difficult to kill you. And against Darklaw, she has mass purification, which kind of like cleans up the whole board. So you remove all attachments, and that's a very good card against decks like Darklaw. And then on top of those things, you have Garina Road attachment. So you have like a natural way of using or running your own attachments so that you can also cover the woolen attachments. So those are, I think that because like you can just bring like a normal, good, solid Zana deck, and she's like a natural counter to many of these decks such as Bloodfang and Darklaw and even Iron Mage. So I find her to be also like kind of like an attachment deck and location deck counter.
What was your reasoning for bringing Gravebone? I'm very curious to hear that.
Actually, I had a very tough time choosing my shadow heroes because like I just don't like Darklaw. So I pondered whether I should bring Darklaw or not, but I just don't like his playstyle. So I decided to bring some counters instead, because Gravebone has access to Leash of Life, which is a card that makes one of your allies immune to attachments. So Gravebone has like some kind of a counter against attachment decks. And then I wanted also like a fast deck, and I've been playing Gravebone a lot. I think that he's maybe my signature hero. So he's also a hero I'm very familiar with. So those were some of the reasons. And I like Isadora builds, and I wanted to bring a mage. So that was the reason. But I'm not sure. We will see. I have played one game with Gravebone, and I won that game. But we will see whether it was a good choice or not.
Who are you matched up with? Who did Gravebone face?
I faced Serena, and that's not a good matchup. But I think that if you really if you can play that deck, and if you have a good initial hand, then I think that this deck can beat most other decks. So that's also one reason why I wanted to bring this deck, because you get to play it out most of the time. So you when you see the opposing hero, you are not just like, oh, I'm screwed, I lost this game. But you go there and play it out, and actually I won this game quite easily because I had good draw and my opponent didn't. Like,
I suppose Lease of Life was a good counter for those capture praise around.
Yeah, I think so. All right, and so and then my last hero was Baduru, and I brought like kind of a very strange list. I don't want to like give out, like hand out all the details now, but today I played against Sam Jay's location Bloodfang. We started our games, and I beat him with this Baduru because I brought some Void Hammers, which is a weapon that exiles the locations. So, but it's a pretty strange deck, and we will see how I will fare with it. In general, I'd say that Baduru has a very strong ability, and also like I was expecting Elementalis, and I think that Baduru is a pretty good counter against him.
So Otto, you lost 4-2 to somebody. Which heroes did you bring?
I brought Darklaw, and I lost my Darklaw game versus opponent Victor, and I won with my Victor against opponent Darklaw. So Darklaw went 2-0 there. Nothing spectacular. I brought a slightly fat Victor with answers to many problems. I brought Boris. Actually, was hoping to use my Yahari against Darklaws and face the rest of the heroes with the typical Boris answers without turn to allies. Which was a good option and tested option against mages, but unfortunately my opponent had Snow Sapphire, and he stole my own Smashing Blow. So that kind of ended in an unexpected way with a flooded board, which eventually wasn't enough. So it was Boris, it was Victor. Zana didn't make it in the edge. Maybe that wasn't a very wise decision, but that's what happened. I had a Darklaw, nothing to talk about it in there. And my fourth hero, which was a slight surprise, was a Slim Praxis with Regression Chamber. I thought that it would be a good solution against all those captured preys, because I hasted Zar Modulator. You cannot answer to that with captured prey. So yeah, it was a very good play against many decks. Also, it was a very quick deck versus Iron Mages. So all my decks were actually prepared to face Iron and Darklaw and be consistent enough for the rest of the heroes.
And as I lost 4-0, we'll go through mine very quickly. So I picked a Ladwin because I'm known for a Ladwin back in the day, because that's how I got the highest up on the ladder in my history. I think I made third one season with a Ladwin, my 40-card Alad winning deck. So I brought kind of a rush Aladwin there. That's why I almost actually won a game. Probably shouldn't have been 50 cards. I should tune it down to 40 for a rush deck. I brought Serena, who we've not talked about yet, and that was just for fun, really. I mean, black market, stealing stuff. I thought it might make an interesting some games to watch. Hopefully it did for the people that watched the stream that I did. And Zaladar, we've not really talked about him yet either. He's probably my favorite hero now. And I have a soft spot for him, and people run him down. But I think that there's a good deck in there somewhere with allies that have staying power. So that's where I had the Cage Savage and other kind of high health allies. I like buffing them up, but I guess maybe Elementalis is meant to be the one doing that. But what I like about Zaladar the most, and also why I brought Banebow, was the fact that the inevitability is that over time their hero abilities will be able to chip away. So if there's kind of you're kind of locked, then you know that eventually their hero ability will kind of break through. So that's why I went for those. Didn't pay off, but anyway, that's why I did it.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up talking about Slugfest there. Hopefully that's given the listeners some insights as to why matches went the way they did, and maybe some insights as to how they're going to pan out in the future. Now what we're going to do is take a moment. We're going to go down the list and talk about the different locations that were introduced in the Lost Lands set, because we've never done an in-depth analysis of them. And they seem to be having a pretty big impact on the game and on the meta in general, even though for a while there that they didn't. But they they have definitely earned their place as noteworthy inclusions in a lot of decks. A lot of decks really, really require or rely on them to bring about their full power. So I guess we're just going to start at the top of the list and work our way down.
As a person that brought them into the game, whether people like them or not, they've probably been the most controversial addition to the game, and it was my idea for a card type that brought them in. So I'll talk over them, and we can discuss whether they've shown up in the past and whether they're showing up now. So first card then.
Well, let me ask you.
Okay.
Let me ask you first, Gondo. What inspired you, or what was the trigger? What made you think to add locations? Because they are a very unique. There's a unique ability, a unique mechanic to them. What gave you the idea? Talk me through that.
There was a lot to it, but I like the idea that games could swing, because it used to be a time where you kind of knew that you were heading towards losing, you couldn't really turn it around, and games that I used to enjoy was how you'd always turn it round somehow, you'd swing it back. And because the locations are effectively free, I mean, you needed the card in your hand, didn't you? You needed it in the deck in place of another, so they're not free. You play that card and suddenly you could even be kind of storing a bit of a combo as well in your hand. So the idea that the battle could shift by playing this location and playing something that benefits from it, I wanted the games to turn more and be more exciting, because they can come out of nowhere. Any card in your opponent's hand could be a location, and they could play it on their next turn. You could know that they're going to be on 5 resources and you're expecting a 5cc ally or something, because you know the heroes well by now. But you don't know that their other card might be a location that they're also going to play. Bam, it comes down, suddenly the game is turned. So that was the main goal for them. The inspiration was the card games I mentioned in the intro. So both the Star Wars game and the Lord of the Rings game, they have these locations in them, and both of them have the concept of something for you and something for your opponent being different. So they have different capabilities, and I wanted to see if I could bring that to Shadow Era for the reasons I just said. So yeah, I was inspired by the other games, basically.
May I add something?
Absolutely.
Hallelujah. We finally have locations. I mean, I'm not sure if I like the ones that out there. I'm not sure that they are, some need nerf and some need buff. Probably most of them need one of the two. But hell yeah, we got some new stuff to play with. And 3 of them are already kicking serious ass. I mean, Lakmir kicks ass with Darklaw. Garena kicks ass with Zana, and it always did. And Ravencrest is also needed. And of course, Irem. 3 of them actually have resource acceleration. Lakmir and Irem, huge resource acceleration. Garena, quite some. And they do introduce a very different part in the game. You change a whole new background and you play in another place. Opponent cannot really change the place unless he is prepared to. So it's pretty much passive-aggressive without a very easy solution around it. So you do have to work. So yeah, I like that locations are here. They were supposed to be only 4 of a very specific type. It's not like allies where you can pack 40 if you want. Pretty much every deck works around one specific location of 4 types. I mean, if you take out those very gimmicky void reds decks, which based on whatever location you dig, everything else just have 4 copies max, and that's it. So yeah, they are game changers. They do what they were supposed to. They are here. Of course, we will need to worry about some of them being too strong and other too weak. But I am very happy that the game evolves in a way that many more things than an ally hitting another ally happen.
You know, something about locations that always kind of intrigued me or like made my brain wrestle with is the fact that they're not prevalent enough that you're going to pack location hate or location counters in your deck. And so if you are playing a deck that has location in it, there's a very good chance that your opponent's not going to have any kind of counter to the extra oomph that the location brings to your deck.
Well, yet.
Yet.
Because I think that it is inevitable that we will have to see allies. I mean, cards that are useful in any case. Of course, maybe a little weaker than other allies, but for the cause of being useful towards location decks. So we will have to see allies bringing in locations or bringing out locations or reburying locations, fighting them out of your deck or your graveyard.
Or swapping control of them.
Sure, yeah, even better.
When they originally designed, they were going to come in as the last part of the Lost Lands, and they came in the first part. And what you're mentioning about if people aren't using them very much, then the people who are, there aren't going to be many counters. But they're naturally balanced in that if they're so strong, then more people will bring locations, and the more bringing locations, suddenly your own location becomes inherently more fragile. So as they catch on, maybe with a few more stronger ones, then things will flip back and forth rather than stay for the whole game.
So starting off, the first one is Lorhan Twilight Encampment, which of course is a human location that allows you to kill one of your own Twilight allies and in return seek another Twilight ally at the cost of a shadow energy. This also gives your opponent the ability, if an opposing Twilight ally was killed this turn, all friendly allies gain +1 health. So basically it allows you to swap out maybe a crippled or a weak Twilight to get a strong one in your hand, but the trade-off is if your opponent kills one of your allies, it's gonna buff his board.
Yeah, I think that this location is it's useful mostly in tech tournaments. Like it has its places and it can be played in quick match as well. But I think that it's best used like in tech tournaments where you might bring a Twilight deck to surprise your opponent. And this location has like some anti-attachment or anti-cripple potential as well. So it can definitely be a good counter against some decks.
I agree, but I think that its main part is the part that you get to dig for an ally. And unless that ally has a very specific game-changing plan, then there's no reason actually doing it. Because you cannot hope that an ally you have will die or will get an attachment on that he can easily die. So you really hope that you do have allies and they do remain alive. So if you kill them, I suppose that the only way to profit around is if you play too much combo cards like scriptures or maybe
the Twilight Headdress.
Yeah.
But both with the location and with headdress they die instantly, right?
Well, it's been a while since they kind of shined the Twilights. No pun intended there. But if you remember, the Twilight abilities usually kill them at the end of the turn. So you've already decided one's going to die at the end of the turn, and then you use this location to actually kill them early and find a replacement. So it doesn't matter if they've got an attachment on or not. You've already decided this one's going to die for some benefit. Then you cash in with the location.
Like an opportunist makes their attack and then you can sacrifice them.
Yes. Double value, essentially, yeah. They're already going to die. And that's their theme, really, of the tribe.
I'd kind of like to discuss what killed Sicelo. At one point, it was a very, very dominant location, and then it was basically nothing. And of course, that's the one that lets you discard a card. If you discard a card, you draw a card, and then you can activate it to discard an ability or location from your hand. And your opponent has the same ability. They can activate it to discard a card in their hand and draw a card. What was it that we used to make it very, very strong that now it seems to be irrelevant?
Well, I suppose two things killed it. One of them is that some very gimmicky one-sided... The lay low changing automatically made one of the strongest deck made around Sicelo Brothers. Lance with lay low and Knight of Naxio. It made it. It took it to oblivion. That was one thing. The second thing was that it changed initially to 5th turn play. And until it went to 4th turn play, other decks came around. The meta shifted. I'm pretty sure that it can work very well right now as well. but we should never forget that it is always relevant to what the meta is. So if the meta shifts towards, for example, mages, and your guys get inside, even whatever the draw, you play a knight and you cannot buff it and it dies to the next spell. So it was less relevant. But I think that it's a card that we will see in the future quite some. I don't think that it needs very much changing.
Yeah, I've already seen some Templar decks use it. I think that it's a decent card. In the right deck, it can definitely be quite strong.
I don't think we need to say a whole lot about Garena Road or Irem. Both Lightning Quarry and Garena Road are pretty prevalent in the meta. I think everybody kind of has an idea about where their strengths lie.
Yeah, we would agree or disagree of which needs to be reseen. I mean, Garena has had its buff and nerfs many times, and I think now it's very stable and a very good card without causing negative experiences. But I'm not sure that the same thing goes with Irem. It goes with in the same category as Lackmire of locations creating too much resource acceleration too fast. And I believe that I would be very surprised to see Irem remaining exactly the same.
Do you think lowering it to 2 resource renewal versus 3 would be too crippling to it? Like, would it still be good if it was 2 that it renewed?
I've been thinking about that. I think that it would be a change that would make sense, because I think that the main problem here is that you get to play it on turn 4, and then you play Lightning Bolt or Shadow Bolt, and then you still have 3 resources left, which is kind of like a turning point. If that would be only 2, I think that it would make this location a bit more reasonable. It would still remain valid. One thing could be also I don't really like the non-controller side ability. I think that it should get exiled instead of shuffled back into its owner's deck. I think that it could get exiled, because every time I'm playing against these Irem decks, if the opponent has a draw source, I don't think that it's worth it really to shuffle this card back in their deck. So having it exiled would be something, could make it slightly more balanced, and it would also increase the interaction between the players, because also the opponent would have kind of a counter, so that he could remove this very powerful card.
Instead of shuffling it, you could just put it on the bottom of your deck. So it would make searching for armors more relevant.
That's also one possibility.
Moving on. Anything to be said about Gondorian, the Braxna Citadel? One gives your allies defender and stops locations. I feel like it's got some interesting niche applications, but generally speaking, it's not good enough all around to really include.
Yeah, I agree about that. I think that it's when you see it in quick matches, they're mostly just as a location counter, just to cover other locations and give you the 1 turn advantage. And that's about
it. Since it is a location counter, I see no reason being played at turn 4 and not from turn 2, for example.
Yeah, I agree.
You're saying you think it should be lowered to turn 2, perhaps?
Well, apart from some gimmicky Void Wretch decks that look for cheap early locations, I see no other reason that someone could exploit it on turn 2. Seriously, who would play it on turn 2?
Right, no, I agree with you there. Plus, it's at the expense of a card. It allows you to maybe hold on to the board with a hero or with a build that would not normally be able to lock down the board on turn 2 or 3. Like say, somebody like an Elementalis or something that's not now they're running
or make Tala great again.
yeah, there you go.
MTGA. That's Magic the Gathering Arena. Not make Tala great again. Anyway. Drop that to a lower location number. That could be interesting.
What about the Wilds trading port? It's a really neat, concept that, you get resource acceleration when you bring in some artifacts. But I don't know. I also at the same time,
it's already great. Isn't it already great?
I think that it is. It's very good, with Aldmore decks. And actually, I had a game against Aldmore Logan in a pop-up recently, and I really like this card. My opponent played a deck built around this card, and because I have the means to counter it using like the non-controller side ability, and it kind of like can destroy the gameplay of that particular deck. So that's also why I like this location, because it has like a built-in weakness which the opponent can use disadvantage. So that's also why I like it. It's there's like interaction between the players and the location. So that's what I like. And still it's strong. It's a strong card.
All right. The Warped Desert, I think, is a pretty balanced card. Would you guys agree? Next card to your opponent.
Yeah, I agree about that. It's pretty
good fun. That is a fun card, though, isn't it? If you can start, get the next card owned by an opposing player to be exiled this turn is placed in your hand. I mean, we remember that Dimension Ripper going all the way back. That was fun, wasn't it? Getting people's cards. Now you can do it with Black Market and a few other ways. So that was. I don't think this is designed to be top tier. And you can play it turn 1 if you want. You can take people to the desert right at the start. But enough said about that.
It's very good. Yeah, it's very good. It's early. It's early enough to become a location barrier. And it's good enough to buff exile-based decks or exile heroes like Lowest. I think it has very different uses, and it's very well thought of card.
Yeah, definitely.
Dead Man's Breach. I think Dead Man's Breach is pretty balanced. Doesn't get a whole lot of play, but where it does, I think it's pretty useful. Would you say?
I agree about that. It definitely has its uses. It's a good card, but not for every deck. Yeah. I think that it's a very balanced location, this one as well. You can build a deck around it, and it can be good. It can be a meta call, but it's not something you run in every deck.
Agreed.
Well, yeah, I agree it has its uses. I do want to make a statement, though, that if there are some locations that might provide danger of overpowered decks in the future, this might be one. And this is why it's played on turn 3 instead of turn 2. Because eventually, someone broke it, and that's the reason why allies cannot activate abilities. So we will have to keep an eye on this location in the future. But yeah, it seems fitting some very specific archetypes.
The next one up, I think it's pretty balanced. I just want to make a special note that I never anticipate seeing it, and it always makes me curse at the screen when it happens, and that's Valley of Doom, where like I just presume I'm like, wow, my opponent is horrible. He's allowed me to amass all this stuff on the board, and I see and I know, like, based on what he's playing, he has no way of wiping the board. I'm going to just mop him up, and the next thing I know, all my allies are exiled. So I think it's a great card. It doesn't fit in a lot of decks, but when it does, yeah, it just, like I said, it makes me curse at my screen.
I think it's more of a tech tourney card, and it's a great tech tourney card if you know when to use it.
Yeah,
so it has its value. Yeah, not all locations need to be for quick matches. This is a great card for tourneys, in my opinion.
And don't forget Steadfast. If you're running Steadfast and use that, then the Steadfast ally.
You could run that in like Elementalis if you're running, like, a lot of the elemental allies have Steadfast.
Yeah, the Stardust ones, yeah.
The next one's Kristen's Ridge, where you can have deal 3 ice damage to multiple targets based on how many ice attack allies you have. I've never been able to make it work, even like in a kind of experimental deck, but I'm not sure what it would need to improve.
Well, unless you are A1 90s, then I don't know that anyone else has the answer to that.
Yeah, I agree. He's the only player in the game that runs this card, and actually also gets he makes it good results with it.
Yeah, and in good rates as well. I mean, he does things with success.
It's interesting that it hasn't caught on. Like, if he's done it and he's prominent enough in the game, you'd think that if it was a solid enough play, like, it would have caught on. It would have, found its place.
Yeah, but I think the reason is that his decks are extremely complicated. Like, they are decks that run like 2 different locations. I think that the reason why other people don't do it is that maybe they don't have the right mindset and the right knowledge to build a deck that can benefit from this card.
Well, yeah, Nigis decks can only be played by Nigis. That's totally true.
Next one is Valley of Secrets for Ravencrest. That's another card. It seems very balanced. It's just not exceptionally useful with that. When you summon a support ability, renew a resource, draw a card, which is very, very useful. But in order to capitalize it, you're going to need to run, I would think, at least 6 to 8 support abilities, and it's hard to fit 8 support abilities into a deck.
Actually, you can. I mean, Ravagers do it with great success. There are many Terra Dune, especially Terra Dune decks, Banebow decks as well. I do play during these days a Banebow based on on Ravencrest, on Double Back, which comes for free with Ravencrest and actually triggers it for a draw. And then all those cheap Hunter allies who come with half cost. If they cost 2, now they cost 1, so it's half cost with Double Back. And I cannot take credit for this deck. It was made from Nobili Shao. He kicked my ass twice while I was playing Gwen, and he even won my Soul Seeker down with it. So I'm giving it a spin, and I can tell you that it's very efficient. Not very consistent, but it's very efficient. I mean, I just want to find the details around it. So Ravencrest is, yeah.
Who was that? Who was the player that you cited?
It was from Ka Guild. It's Nobili Shao, respected player. Yeah, very good player. And generally, we were talking about the location. So I think that Ravencrest fits very specific archetypes, but it does in a very nice way. It's either hit or miss, but when it hits, it's very difficult to answer about.
Interesting. I'll have to look more at it.
That's the dinosaur location you mentioned earlier, yeah?
Yeah, the dinosaur, yeah.
The artwork, yeah.
Yeah, it's a dinosaur watching a meteorite falling on its doom.
Right.
Yeah.
Shoal, Tempest Scourge, that's one of the newer ones, like, with the latter released locations. I feel like I've seen it a few times.
I got hit with it the other day. Once that comes down and you're running an item-heavy deck, it's very easy to not pay attention to the sustain. So you use all your resources for the turn, you hit enter, and then, whoops, I didn't leave any, and I've just lost my ill-gotten gains.
It seems like a really good tech card.
Yeah, it's a good deck card.
It's a tech card.
Yeah, and there are also like some Serena decks that use it because like they have this card that steals the opposing ally. Do you remember what's the name of that card? Makes you able to use
coercion, right? Yeah, you coerce it, then you bounce it to your hand.
Yeah, that's right. So that's kind of like a very neat combination you can do with this card. So I think that it's a very balanced card, and it has uses in tech decks, and it can be used in Serena as well if you make a deck based on that idea. And those decks can be quite decent.
Since we did speak of Nigis 1 minute before, I need to mention him because he created a deck so evil. I mean, we both didn't expect ourselves what we were seeing when he produced the video of one of his plays. He made a Zana with so many items and so many locations and void dresses and stalling with rain delay and like that. And he won the whole game playing one card. He finished by playing, I don't know, the 6th or 7th location. So he played 7 void dresses for free, 4 void dresses for free. But Zana does not have any haste. So he knew that they would get dealt with. So the key card that won him the game, and that was the plan all along, was sold location down, and he used decay. So he destroyed like 10 artifacts, and with the void dresses inside, he created the damage like 40 HP.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a one-turn kill. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the video. It's so evil you cannot even imagine. He won with one card.
Yeah, because he had this card on the table so that when items or attachment get destroyed, they get exiled, and then he had the void dresses that deals damage for each card that gets exiled, and then he played widespread decay to destroy all items at once.
That's really awesome.
So yeah, every item triggered the void rage. I mean, I'm sorry for giving out secret A1 decks because they are so evil. I feel the guilt for exposing the evil out. Now everyone knows. But I wanted to say that within the A1 chat rooms we do things like that. We do create evil decks. Some of them we let out, when some we decide that they are so strong that we have to destroy. just for the sake of Shadow Era.
I love that. That's great. I love it. Anytime I hear about somebody making a deck that, maybe it doesn't have like the highest win rate, but when it wins in such a spectacular fashion that alone makes it worth playing. I have a special place in my heart for those sort of players that they come up with that stuff. That's great. So what do we got? I think this one leaves everything to be desired, really, and that's Infested Swamplands. Makes your wild allies cheaper. I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's not really a lot of variety.
Just ignore this card until we do have wild allies that can be played.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it.
Right. Good call. So to say Volcanic Springs, I'm not really sure. Like, it feels like it might blend in well with Ravager, but Ravager already has other locations that are better for it, I think.
I think I should say something about this, because I put it in all 4 of my decks in Slugfest, because I thought, well, this can cover locations, and also it can get at like stealthy allies and things. And what I found was it was really effective. I'd spend my 1 SC to set somebody ablaze, or I would spend it to, like, if my guy was frozen, then I'd unfreeze him and set him ablaze. What really worked against me was that I was using up my precious shadow energy, and all my heroes actually needed to store it up. So also the opponent would hit me, I'd put it down, or I'd be thinking of putting it down, but they've got shadow energy stored up, and then they can use 2 shadow energy now to damage mine and set mine on fire. I had a lot of allies with like 2 health, so playing that card would have been suicide, because they would have got set ablaze.
Not only that, I remember your Ladwin freezing an opponent Fatty, I think it was Nathan, and the opponent used your own location, which was just played, and you could win the game.
No, I don't think I could have won.
For no reason, and he just unfroze its ally.
I thought I was going to lose. And I went for the win, and I forgot that he was still frozen. And so anyway, that card's good. If you
guys watching, don't do it.
Thaddeus's Vault, like, that's a card that I think is great, and I've used it to some pretty powerful ends from time to time, but it didn't seem to find its way into undead builds.
Yeah, I think that this card, like, it has its uses, and I think that it's very balanced overall. Like, it gives you like the chance like to ramp up some resources. But also it has like the non-controller side, which can hurt you, because usually you use Forgotten Horrors with this deck, and sometimes it can hurt you when your opponent steals your ally. But again, like, speaking of Nigis, he's also like using this card with Undead Moonstalker, and I also tried a similar build, and it works pretty well for him.
Well for me. It's a very balanced card, in my opinion, in both ways. I mean, if opponent steals a key card, then that's bad for you.
Yeah.
We probably mean Forgotten Horror, because I don't think that there is another card that he would steal and it would feel some pain.
Yeah.
So the point is that I don't think that there's a problem with the card. The card is very effective, very strong, very quick. It has great uses. The problem is that there are so few good shadow heroes who can use undead at the moment. I mean, elementals have their own allies. Hunters have Krugels. So you pretty much leave. You don't really have strong warriors, and if they do, they use Ravagers more. So Moon is an excellent hero to use them, but the point is that there is so much Moon hate with Keons running everywhere, that's the reason you don't see that location anymore.
Well, that makes sense. So our next one up is Azen, Mount Kazar. I really, really like this location. I've run it in multiple Ravager decks, and I find that it's both a fun card as well as very effective.
Yeah, I've seen it used in like Terra Dune Ravager decks and Rathem as well, and it can be very useful. It's a very efficient card in the right build.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very good card. The problem is not with the card. The problem why people don't see it very often is not with the card. The problem is that there are actually only 2 Ravager cards right now able to use it. It's only Crucible and Zealot, because there is no other card right now that you can effectively and consistently see damaged and not dead. So only the ones who are damaged on entry are actual targets for Mount Khazar. And that's problem one. And the second problem, the most important in my opinion, is that like every location, playing it from hand and making a card disadvantage in your hand means that you have to have some strong draw engines. And unfortunately, Ravagers don't really have draw engines in the moment. Not too effectively, they even burst to even more cards because they have very key cards who have sustain.
Those are good points. Lackmeyer, Training Outpost. I think we can all agree that it is at least great, if not maybe a little bit too good.
I think it's all right. I think it's profit that's the problem, Woven profit. But that's maybe the subject for the next podcast.
Yeah, maybe you're right, actually.
Yeah, okay. We'll come back. We'll circle back on that next time. The last location is Rankit Proving Grounds. I think the problem with it is just it's a shadow location, and I don't think there's really strong shadow homunculus builds.
Yeah, I think that some shadow homunculus, like they would need like a better turn 2 ally. So I think that like I've used this in the past, and it's a decent card. But what they are lacking is like maybe a better turn 2 play, some ally, and then this card could see some more play.
Well, it's a hit or miss card. I mean, not all cards need to be in medium range decks. It's a very hit or miss. It's a very quick card. Its power relies on emptying the opponent board quickly and creating circumstances where he cannot answer. And I think that in this aspect, it works very well.
Yeah.
Some decks do have answers right now, but what we expect is that with the more cards able to combo with it, it will become very strong. I think it's very balanced in any case.
Could you run it in a deck like maybe an Elementalis that was not really running Homunculus and just run it as a means of drawing cards? Because then the drawback doesn't really hit you so much.
You could do that, but there are, I think, better options as well. But it's definitely not a terrible idea, but not optimal either.
Yeah, you could, but consider this, that it's not about the health points that you actually miss. So Elementalis giving 3 health points doesn't mean a thing if you're using Ranked. What you want is the attack power to empty the opponent board quickly. So that's the reason why Raika is so effective on this, because if she buffs the whole board and it kills your allies, it doesn't need the 3 HP to just leave more. One is that, and the second is that mages have access to Abomination Factory, which works great both with Rant, which buffs your allies and triggers location, and also it works with Devourer, which is also a reason to buff your Arachnid and work around it with triggering Ranked. So it's a whole combo which is very relevant to mages.
Wouldn't Ranked also work alongside Gold Lace Shield? Because that adds base attack, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think I've used this card with Gravebone because then you can use like the factory, Abomination Factory, also to discard a fatty that you want to recycle in play from the graveyard. Or then, as Otto said, you can use it in a very fast Raika deck.
I'm thinking about Cage Savage.
What?
I mean, a lot of
Ravager,
Ravagers actually gain base attack or health, don't they? So you could actually lob this in a Ravager deck, maybe.
Right, that's when I said Elementalis without Homunculus. That I was thinking, Ravager.
Yeah,
but that would only be one shadow energy.
One card.
For a non-consistent one card, because you lose the second part of the equation where you don't have Homunculus to gain the attack and the health.
Do you remember when Magia? Let's circle it back now. Magia 2 SC to draw a card. This is 1 SC to draw a card.
Exactly, and I don't think it's as inconsistent as you're saying, Otto. Because like in an Elementalis like a Ravager deck, I would dare say, I mean, it's not every time. But after turn 3 or turn 4, I would think you're getting a buff every turn. Whether it's from ability or whether it's from shield or whether it's from...
Well, you can't use the ability though, can you? Because you're spending 1 shadow energy.
Suppose that you are right. And this has a part that can be used in a very strong way, even with the first part of the equation. Then if you have an actual deck with homunculus allies, so you also have the second part of the equation. Why is not overpowered? Why it's not used?
I don't know.
It will
Like I
be
said,
after this podcast.
Well, the reason I think it goes back to what my initial point was, it's a shadow location, and I don't think that there is a strong enough hero homunculus build in shadow yet. Like they just don't have the right. They don't have the right allies.
I agree about that. I think that what they mostly lack is a more reliable turn 2 ally. That's something they don't have. They have like Cinderborn, which is kind of like half decent, and then they have Blightred Rant, which is okay-ish, but both are kind of like they are not strong enough to make this kind of deck consistent.
And Cinderborn is mage only, and you're not playing buffs in mage decks typically.
May I add a very specific comment for all locations? Now you actually mentioned it, why it doesn't work. Find me one location which is overpowered or has been overpowered or generally strong and costed shadow energy. Take a look at the costs. Was there ever a location which costed shadow energy and made it to the top?
Right, I see what you're saying. Basically, any of the locations that are a shadow energy sink did not take off.
Yeah, exactly. Garina did though in the past, but actually it didn't, because you weren't like, you didn't have to use the seek part. So yeah, I agree with you. Actually, it's true.
You are correct. Garina did break it, but Garina broke it because it was very instant, and it actually paid off because its 2 shadow energy came with heroes who don't really use that shadow energy, because priests don't really use. They found themselves very often not using their energy at all, especially if you are Jericho.
Yeah.
And in the end, so you use some extra shadow energy, just some spare one, because no other hero uses Garina effectively in the end. Only priests do at the moment.
Yeah. The reason why priests can use it effectively is that they have tidal wave. So you kind of like get to use the card many times because like you can clear the board multiple times, and then also like the discount helps you out because it makes playing fatty is like slightly cheaper, and like when you have ramped up to 9 resources, you can, for example, use Tidal and then seek Night of Golden Dawn and play that. Or Night of Crimson Dusk. Anyways, a 5-cost ally for 4, and then you kind of wipe out the board and leave your own 5-cost ally on the board.
They also have access to forgiveness, so it's even more shadow energy. And the part that proves what we say is that no Trebin ever used Garina effectively, because he's a hero that needs the shadow energy. You can understand that when a Jericho faces a warrior, he has a dilemma. Do I kill Blood Frenzy, which is very essential to wipe out this warrior, or do I keep my shadow energy to seek some allies with Garina? And I think that when that dilemma comes, everyone would sack Garina and just kill every Blood Frenzy they would find.
Yeah,
for sure.
So pretty much we say that this is the exception that proves the general rule that locations who suck your shadow energy don't find their way to the light, right?
Yeah,
they're not broken. They don't get overpowered and show up. I mean, if you've got a conditional shadow hero energy, like say Terra Dun, and you've not built around it, or Aladwin, it's not a good example for this one, but Aladwin, if she's got no allies to zap, then her ability is useless. So if you've got a kind of conditional hero ability, that's when maybe something like this that can use up your shadow energy that otherwise would be a waste might work. So I don't know whether in this case there are conditional ones that you would bring this in for, but that's kind of the idea. It's an alternative outlet for shadow energy. The locations
then it becomes a tech card.
Yeah, sure.
Otto, Wimbled, Gondorian, thank you so much for all being here and being part of this. We hope that you out there listening have enjoyed and gained some insights into Shadow Era. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening, guys.
All right, everyone, that's the end of today's episode. We really hope you've enjoyed listening. Keep an eye on the shadowera.com forums for announcements related to the next episode. Once again, this is BlanketEffect, and I've been your host today. Thank you so much for tuning in to State of the Era, the podcast brought to you by the A1 Alliance, where we discuss all things Shadow Era.